It's December 15th, 1953. John Hill walks down Fifth Avenue in New York City, carrying a black leather briefcase in hand. In the street, cab drivers honk their horns and pedestrians weave through the traffic. Hill takes a moment to compose himself. He straightens his spotted blue tie and adjusts his wireframe glasses. Then he lowers his chin and trudges over frosty concrete toward the gleaming doorways of the Plaza Hotel. Hill is 63 years old. He's well aware that right now, he's about to walk into the most important business meeting of his life. Hill steps out of an elevator and spots a man with a cigarette in his hand. The man is named Bert Goss, and he works at Hill's public relations firm. Hill greets him with a nod. You know, you really shouldn't smoke, Bert. You're kidding, right? You think I'm going to get sick? I'm not talking about your health. God knows you could use a little exercise. No, in a few minutes, the four most powerful tobacco men in the country will walk out of that elevator. But only one of them makes the cigarette in your hand. The other three, they'll be sore at you for not buying their product. So put it out. Goss nods, and right as he stubs out his cigarette, the elevator chimes. The four men have arrived. Hill puts on his biggest winning smile. Then he greets the men, claps them on the shoulders, and leads them into a suite with a view of the entire city. Hill shuts the door. As the men take their seats, he begins. Gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for joining me for what is truly a historic occasion. I never thought I'd see the heads of Philip Morris and American Tobacco sitting down with Benson & Hedges and the U.S. Tobacco Company. I know you aren't allies or partners, but 2 weeks ago, everything changed, didn't it? Hill picks up the latest issue of the medical journal Cancer Research. This report says that cigarettes are dangerous, that they cause cancer, that they kill people. And unfortunately for you, Americans are starting to believe it. Joseph Coleman of Benson & Hedges speaks up. I'm of half a mind to say cigarettes might be risky, but who cares? People drink themselves to death all the time, and liquor's still going strong. So let them regulate us like they regulate the booze companies. Hill shakes his head. With all due respect, Mr. Coleman, I don't think increased government interference is what you need. What you need is a good public relations campaign. That's why we all came here today, right? You wanted to get results. The executive from U.S. Tobacco crosses his arms. I was invited to attend this meeting, but I'm afraid I still don't know how public relations can help us win this particular fight. Hill has been waiting for this question since the second the men walked in. He straightens his suit coat, issues a sly grin. I'm going to help you fight fire with fire. We'll get out there and say that these scientists are lying. Then we'll tell people you have your own scientists with different findings about smoking. Coleman of Benson & Hedges leans forward. We could call it something like the Committee for Public Information. Yeah, I like that. But we have to understand this. Every day in every town in America, there's a high school kid about to buy his very first pack of cigarettes. He wants the girls to think he's Marlon Brando. Kids like that, they're the future of your industry. And we can't let the fear of getting cancer one day overshadow the importance of looking like Marlon Brando today. Gentlemen, that is public relations. And that is how we're going to protect your products and, most importantly, your profits. All I need you to do is say yes, and then we go to war for you. The men in the room exchange glances. Then they turn back to Hill and nod. Hill maintains a cool, confident expression, but inside he is glowing. This project might be the biggest of his life. It's his chance to control the message, to shape how Americans think about themselves and their health. It's also a major payday. It might only be mid-December, but in the Plaza Hotel, for John Hill, Christmas has just come early. American Scandal is sponsored by the new Audible original Bad Republican by Meghan McCain. In her debut audio memoir, Meghan McCain gives a first-hand look into the life of the conservative rebel and departing co-host of The View. You'll hear what it's like to grow up as the daughter of an American icon and to mourn his loss very publicly just 1 year into her tenure as co-host of America's most-watched daytime talk show. Her memoir also reveals how she handled attacks from the U.S. president and her thoughts on cancel culture, dating, and how our country treats new mothers. It's unsparingly honest, deeply relatable, and highly entertaining. Go beyond what you know about Meghan McCain from TV and your newsfeed. Visit audible.com/Bad Republican and listen now.
We get support from the new podcast, Hemingway's Picasso. Stephen Coe lived many lives. He was an NFL journeyman, a male model, and one of the most well-connected smugglers in 1980s Miami. Coe collected many souvenirs from his adventures, but his most treasured bounty, a beautiful ceramic crafted by Pablo Picasso and gifted to Ernest Hemingway at the author's Cuban home. So the story goes. Lost during the Cuban Revolution, the artwork resurfaced when Coe took it as payment for a drug run financed by the notorious Pablo Escobar. Coe passed away in 2018, passing the piece down to his son, Stevie. Stevie feels he needs to complete his father's mission of selling this piece and telling Steve's cinematic life story. Is the Picasso authentic or a fraud? Was Steve Coe a big talker or a real deal smuggler? Listen to new episodes of Hemingway's Picasso every Monday wherever you get your podcasts.
From Wondery, I'm Lindsey Graham, and this is American Scandal. Today, America's relationship with cigarettes is far different than it was in the 1950s. Smoking has been banned in restaurants and bars, in airplanes and offices and factories. There are no more billboards with cartoon camels or rugged cowboys. Cigarettes now come labeled with severe warnings about their effects on human health. But this wasn't always the case. For much of its history, the tobacco industry operated with impunity. The average American believed smoking was harmless, if not glamorous. Then reports emerged in the 1950s, suggesting smoking was in fact dangerous and addictive. America's biggest cigarette manufacturers went on the counteroffensive and refused to admit that cigarettes posed serious health risks at all. The industry crushed many of its fiercest critics, and by the 1990s, it had grown into a $200 billion a year industry while remaining largely unregulated. Then a shift took place. Bill Clinton, the anti-tobacco governor of Arkansas, was elected president in 1992. And soon his FDA was emboldened to take a stand against cigarette makers. At the same time, employees inside tobacco companies and state politicians saw a new opportunity to make big tobacco pay. This is the story of those people who went head-to-head with big tobacco, fighting one of the most consequential wars in American history. This is episode 1, Smoking Guns. It's January 6, 1988. Merrell Williams braces against the cold as he races toward his new office in Louisville, Kentucky. He's late for his first day of work. As he runs down the street, Williams can feel his age creeping up on him. He's 47, wearing an ill-fitting suit and worn-out dress shoes. His feet hurt, and he reminds himself that he'll buy new shoes once he gets his first paycheck. Money has been tight ever since his second divorce. Finally, the pain in his chest is too much. Williams stops, puts his hand on his knees, and tries to catch his breath. He winces as he looks up at the towering offices of Wyatt, Tarrant & Combs. It's one of the most respected law firms in Louisville, and he has to make a good impression. It's paramount. This is his chance. William rides the elevator to the 10th floor, but when he steps out, he wonders if he's in the wrong place. He finds a series of gray cubicles, but all the employees inside clearly aren't working. Instead, one man roars with laughter into a speakerphone. Another guy flicks a folded-up triangle of paper, which goes flying between another colleague's index fingers. William stands there, dumbstruck. It's then that he hears his name and turns. A man with glasses is peeking his head out of a cubicle. He waves at Williams, calling him over. Williams is starting today as the firm's newest paralegal. After a warm welcome, the man explains that Williams will help the firm's biggest client, Brown & Williamson. It's a global tobacco company with headquarters just blocks away. Williams nods. He knows B&W. They make a brand of cigarettes known as Cool, with a K, and he smokes them religiously. The man says Williams is going to help dig through old B&W legal documents and sort them into categories. Tobacco companies get sued from time to time, and the firm wants to make sure all the paperwork is properly archived. Williams' new colleague then lowers his voice, saying the big bosses never come down here to check on them. That makes this an ideal work environment. In fact, there are only 2 rules, the man says. Never make copies, and never take any of the documents off-site. Other than that, Williams can work however he wants, the man says. He gives him a wink. With that, the man hands Williams a box of documents and a highlighter. Williams carries the heavy box over to his new desk. He removes the lid and selects a sheet at random. It's from 1981, and of little interest, something about setting up a lunch at a local country club. He puts the paper down and selects another. It's a quarterly report from last year. Williams continues digging through the box well into mid-afternoon, reading and sorting. Finally, he picks up a sheet and notes the date in the upper corner. July 1963. Williams gazes into the distance. He would have been 22 back then. That feels like a lifetime ago. Williams starts to read, then stops, and thinks for a minute. Nah, this can't be right. He reads it again. The report says that tobacco has unique tranquilizing effects and that nicotine is addictive. It notes that Brown & Williamson is in the business of selling nicotine, an addictive drug. Williams lowers the page slowly. Nicotine can't be addictive, he thinks. Even he knows that tobacco makers have said as much. They say that smoking is just a habit, one you can quit with just a little willpower. But Williams' mouth goes dry as he considers what this might mean. If what he's just read is true, the tobacco companies have been lying to the American public. Suddenly, for reasons he can't fully explain, Williams grabs a pen and a post-it note. He jots down a note and says, July 63, nicotine addictive. He rips the note from his pad, folds it, and slips it into his pocket. He looks around. No one seems to have noticed. So his jaw set, Williams plunges both hands into the box once more. It's January 1989 in Louisville, Kentucky. Jeffrey Wigand sits in an office on the 26th floor of the Brown & Williamson office tower. Across from him sits Alan Hurd, the company's outgoing director of research and development. Wigand adjusts his silver-rimmed aviator glasses as he tries to contain a surge of excitement. Today is his first day at Brown & Williamson, the tobacco giant. He feels eager to get started in his new role as he takes over from Hurd as the head of R&D. He's also eager to start getting his paychecks. $300,000 a year is not bad. His wife Lucretia is happy about it too. She's a formidable woman with a taste for the finer things. But beyond the paycheck, Wigand is thinking about his young daughter, who's had serious health issues since she was born. This job will ensure that she gets world-class care. Alan Hurd picks up Wigand's resume and reviews some of the highlights. Wigand's doctorate in biochemistry, his background in healthcare consulting. Hurd says that Wigand is clearly a hard worker and he'll make a great addition to the company. But then Hurd clears his throat and lowers his voice. He asks why Wigand decided to join B&W. Typically, men from the medical field want nothing to do with the tobacco business. Wigand nods. This isn't the first time he's been asked this question. Just last week, his brother called to double-check that he was serious about making this move. And his brother issued words of caution. Once Wigand joined Brown & Williamson, he could never return to healthcare. To the medical community, big tobacco was the dark side. Wigand looks directly at Hurd as he responds. He did give his choice a lot of thought, and he's taking the position because he respects what B&W is trying to do. He likes that the company is working to make smoking less risky by developing a safer cigarette. It would be a great service to smokers. Wigand notices that for a brief moment, Hurd stares at him blankly. Then he seems to catch himself. He smiles brightly and announces that it's time to tour the lab. It's probably not the most cutting-edge lab in the world, but he knows Wigand will make do. It's 10 months later, mid-October 1989. Jeffrey Wigand is walking into the office of Kendrick Wells. Wells is an attorney with Brown & Williamson and had left a message saying that Wigand should drop by. As Wigand heads through the office building, he wonders if this has something to do with the conference he just attended in Vancouver. He spent several days meeting with other scientists. They were employees of B&W's parent company, British American Tobacco. They had a series of exciting meetings about the future of tobacco. Wigand still feels a glow thinking about all the ways they're working together to create a safer cigarette. Wigand pushes open the door to Wells' office. Hey, Ken, now a good time? Well, when you're this busy, there's never a good time. But, anyways, come on in. I hear that. Wigand sits down and smiles at the attorney. I just want you to know, whatever it is, I didn't do it. Well, tell that to the judge. So I got the official minutes of your R&D summit in Vancouver, and I just need you to sign off on them. Take a quick look, give them your John Hancock, and you're on your way. Sure, no problem. Wigand takes the documents and begins flipping through them. Everything okay, Jeff? What? No. Looks like we're missing some pages here. Wigand hands the minutes back over. Wells gives them a cursory glance. No, these look right. Ready to approve. Ken, this is only 3 pages long. We spent days on this, talking about ways to make smoking less risky. None of that's here. Nothing on nicotine analogs, nothing on biological assays, nothing on reducing the time. Ken, you can't expect me to sign this. It's redacted. It's barely even a document anymore. Well, I do expect you to sign off on this, and so does the president of the company. Tom Sandifer? That man couldn't pass high school chemistry. Wells leans back in his chair and purses his lips. I'm going to do you a favor, Jeff, and pretend I didn't hear that. Well, do me another favor and tell me why there's dozens of pages missing. Well, it's no secret. Mr. Sandifer objects to much of what was discussed during the meetings. He thinks it's counterproductive. I thought developing a safer cigarette was the priority. When did that change? You'll have to take that up with Mr. Sandifer directly. For now, we need your signature. Ken, this is insane. I'm a scientist. It goes against all my ethics. Jeff, do not throw away a 6-figure salary over a dozen pages. Think of your family. Then just sign it. Wigand swallows hard and looks away. His throat is tight. He thinks about his daughter, who has spina bifida, and about the cost of her treatments. He can't jeopardize her health coverage. And so Wigand lunges forward, grabs the pen, and signs his name. It's autumn 1989. Merrell Williams sits in his cubicle inside the offices of his law firm, where he still works as a paralegal. But he feels weighted down. It's not just the office environment with its damp odor and depressing view of a peeling brick wall. And it's not just his coworkers who spend their days hitting golf balls into overturned coffee mugs. It's not even the terrible secret knowledge that Williams has acquired over the past year. It keeps him up night after night because he knows if the public had this information, there could be massive lawsuits, maybe even prison sentences. But no, right now, Williams feels burdened by something large and bulky underneath his shirt. He stares up at the clock. It's ticking toward noon. Just a few more minutes to wait. Then the clock strikes 12. Right on time, his supervisor cries, "That's lunch, boys." Williams' team members head toward the elevator. He tells them he'll try and catch up later. And then, finally, he's alone. Williams has rehearsed this moment in his head for weeks. Now it's go time. Williams gives a final look around and reaches into his filing cabinet. He grabs several papers that he's left there in the last few months. He tucks the papers under his arm and heads for the men's room. Once there, he finds the furthest stall and locks the door. He sets the documents on the toilet's porcelain tank, then unbuttons his shirt and hangs it off the door. Strapped to his stomach is the secret weapon he's been hiding all day, a gray exercise girdle that he bought last week at Sears. Williams knows that what happens next must be done very carefully. Slowly, he takes the documents and slides them between the girdle and the white tank top he wears underneath. He can only pray the undershirt is thick enough to keep his sweat from soaking the pages. Just then, the door to the men's room swings open with a groan. Williams freezes, cursing. He's left his shirt hanging on the stall door. He can feel it. He's going to get caught. He's going to lose his job. Maybe something worse. But then he just hears the rustling of a trash bag. Williams exhales in relief and mops his brow. It's just the janitor. Once the man is gone, it's time for Williams to leave too. He buttons his shirt and walks out of the bathroom and into the elevator. His destination is the Kinko's Copy Center down the street. He needs to make copies, and fast, before he's caught with the documents outside the building. He knows what he's doing right now could get him into big trouble, but he doesn't feel afraid. Instead, he's burning with rage, because he knows that the real crooks are over at Brown and Williamson. Their crimes are worse than his could ever be. They've been committing them for decades. In the small town of Fox Lake, Illinois, Joe Glennowitz was a hometown hero and 30-year veteran of the local police department. On September 1st, 2015, just 1 month from retirement, he was found dead outside an abandoned cement plant, shot in the chest twice at close range. While the town and Joe's family mourned his passing, hundreds of police officers launched a manhunt to find his killer. After weeks of searching, the lead investigator discovered chilling secrets about Joe, the local police department, and the village of Fox Lake. These were secrets that, once uncovered, would put the town in the national spotlight and haunt them for years to come. Wondery's shocking true crime podcast, Over My Dead Body, is back for a 3rd season with a story about corruption, betrayal, and the secrets of a fallen hero. Follow Over My Dead Body Season 3, Fox Lake, on Apple Podcasts, or you can listen early and ad-free by subscribing to Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts or the Wondery app.
Ross Ulbricht is using the library's Wi-Fi to work on his online marketplace, Silk Road. The site specializes in selling contraband like illegal drugs and depends on cryptocurrency to keep users anonymous. Suddenly, he hears a commotion.
I hate you! Get away from me!
But as he turns his head, a woman grabs his laptop.
Freeze! FBI!
The officers slam Ulbricht's body against the table. Then, the sound of handcuffs being clicked shut signals the end of his life as a free man. Hi, I'm David Brown, the host of Wondery's show Business Wars. We go deep into some of the biggest corporate rivalries of all time. And in our latest series, we tell the story of the wild frontiers of the digital gold rush. Listen to Crypto Wars on Business Wars on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or the Wondery app. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app to listen 1 week early and ad-free.
It's November 1989. Jeffrey Wigand sits in the restaurant at the Brown Hotel, one of the finest establishments in Louisville, Kentucky. The air is filled with the smell of filet mignon and lobster tail, and the table has grown loud with laughter and conversation. Wigand is sitting opposite a number of his colleagues and sips from a Diet Coke. He wishes bitterly that it was a bourbon on the rocks, but bad things tend to happen when Wigand drinks. That's why he quit cold turkey a few years back. One of his colleagues cracks another joke, and the table roars with laughter. Wigand stares down at his food. He feels utterly alone. He'd rather be home with his wife and kids, but given the number of enemies he's now made at Brown and Williamson, it would have been unwise to miss a company dinner. He takes another bite of his food, and as he chews absent-mindedly, he realizes he doesn't really know why he's still working for the company. Sure, the money is good, and money is important, but no amount of money is worth this. His lab coat has become a straitjacket. In the last couple of months, it's become abundantly clear that Brown and Williamson put profit over science and people's health. They don't want an idealistic biochemist like Wigand. They want a puppet. Just then, a nearby conversation cuts through the noise. Wigand puts down his fork and listens. At a nearby table, one of his colleagues tells another that something called Project Hippo is progressing well. The other man says Hippo looks better than something called the Ariel Initiative. Wigand stops chewing and takes a moment to consider the implications of this discussion. He pushes his chair back and rises. Then Wigand walks over to his colleague's table and the two men look up. Wigand says that he's confused. He couldn't help but hear that they were discussing some research and development projects. When Wigand reminds them he's the head of R&D and the names Ariel and Hippo are not projects he's familiar with. With a pointed look, he asks for an explanation. The two men respond with dead silence. Wigand crosses his arms and waits. Finally, one of the men speaks up. He breezily informs Wigand that Ariel and Hippo are just old projects, ancient history, no big deal. And they're not really R&D related, so they're nothing to worry about. Wigand glares and gives a curt nod and turns away. He returns to his table fuming. So this is what it's come to, he thinks. Direct lies to his face from his own peers. Wigand replays the conversation. He suspects Ariel and Hippo are secret projects being carried out behind his back. He sits down heavily, feeling more alone than ever. There's almost no one in his life he can talk to about this. His brother would just say, "I told you so," and tell him to quit. But Wigand just can't leave. He has to consider his daughter and his wife, Lucretia, who would probably say he's just being paranoid. It's possible she's right, but Wigand's instincts say differently. They also say it's time to get all this out in the open. It's time to confront Tom Sandifer, the president of Brown and Williamson. A few days later, Jeffrey Wigand sits in his office at Brown and Williamson. He's writing furiously. Ever since the company dinner, he's begun keeping a secret scientific diary. In it, he documents his work at B&W, every project, every interaction with top management, and every obstacle he faces as he pursues a safer cigarette. He writes all of it in the journal. Just as Wigand closes his journal, his office door swings wide open. It's Tom Sandifer, president of Brown and Williamson. He scowls at Wigand, and Wigand scowls right back. He finds Sandifer to be shallow, ignorant. He's the kind of so-called leader who thinks that smart people exist only to embarrass him. Sandifer looks over at Wigand's journal. "What you working on there?" "Tom, it's 12:30. I thought we were scheduled to meet at 3. "Yeah, well, I decided to move the meeting up." "You wanted to talk, so let's talk." "Okay, maybe you want to close the door?" "How about I leave it open? I've got nothing to hide. What about you?" Wigand frowns. "All right, I'll get right to the point, Tom. I agreed to my job as head of R&D because I thought I could make a difference. Lately, I've gotten the sense that my belief was unfounded." "What the hell are you talking about?" "With all due respect, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I came here to build a safer cigarette." Sandifer rolls his eyes. "Well, for Christ's sake, I don't want to hear anything anymore about a safer cigarette. People like to smoke. They know what they're in for." Wigand can feel his blood start to boil. "Actually, they don't, Tom, and you know it. Nicotine manipulation, ammonia chemistry, it's all to get the customers hooked and keep them hooked to a product that could trigger increased biological activity within the lungs." "Sorry, what's that? Increased biological activity?" "Yeah, increased biological activity. Better known as cancer, Tom." Wigand watches as Sandifer laughs in disbelief and starts to pace the room. "Now, you listen to me, Wigand. People were talking about safer cigarettes well before you got here. And you want to know what the problem is? If we go changing our process, we lose the taste, we lose the smoothness, and we lose customers. And I just don't see how here's something you clearly can't see, despite all your schooling. We also make pipe tobacco, snuff. If we put out this safe cigarette, people are going to start saying, well, wait, they got a safer cigarette over here. Well, what about these products? Are they not safe for me? Because before you know it, we got to remake everything from scratch, and that's stupid. Could we just know?" This conversation is over. Sandifer stomps off. Calmly and quietly, Wigand opens his journal once again and notes the date and time. He takes a deep breath, then begins recording the conversation that just took place. He also starts thinking about his next steps. Sandifer may be the company president, but he's not the ultimate authority. If Wigand can steer clear of him, there may still be a way to change B&W from the inside. It's February 11th, 1992. Merrell Williams sits in his cubicle, surrounded by large boxes stuffed with papers. Williams is in his 4th year at the law firm, and he'd gladly put in 4 more. Every day, he immerses himself in confidential memos about Brown and Williamson, the tobacco giant. And for the first time in his life, he feels important. And so he started to take better care of himself. He's lost a little weight, gotten remarried. He even gained custody of his young daughters from his previous marriage. He hears a ding and looks up. The elevator doors open and a man in a suit walks out. Williams knows him. He's one of the firm's partners, and right away his heart starts to race. He's been stealing and copying confidential memos for 3 years. He hopes and prays that he hasn't been caught, that the partner is here for another reason. But the man stops and announces to the entire office that he has bad news. He thanks the team for its years of loyal service, but says that, unfortunately, all of that has come to an end, effective immediately. It's nobody's fault, simply an action the company must take at this time. He tells them to see the HR department with any questions. Then, with a polite smile, the partner turns on his heel and returns to the elevator. Some of Williams' colleagues let out sighs, others curse. Williams is awash in mixed emotions. On one hand, he just lost his job, but he thought he was on the verge of being exposed, maybe even put in handcuffs. So Williams grabs a box and begins packing up his desk. Then he glances around and casually grabs a handful of documents and drops them in the box. Williams leaves, drives home. He pulls into the driveway, gets out, and carries the box down toward the basement. Williams opens the door and peers down. Below him, cardboard boxes are stacked in long rows. They all contain copies of B&W documents, some dating back 40 years or more. Some detail how the company systematically targeted young teens, all in an effort to turn them into lifelong smokers. Others are financial records. They show how politicians accepted thousands of dollars to oppose anti-tobacco legislation. And then there's the proof that nicotine is addictive, proof that cigarettes cause cancer. Williams carries down his last box. He stands alone, staring at his trove of secrets. He still doesn't know what to do with all of it. Williams has prayed on this a lot, but God has provided no answers. He knows that he's been given a mighty sword. Williams just needs to know how to strike. It's June of 1992. Jeffrey Wigand sits in his air-conditioned office, paging through lab reports. Then his phone rings. It's Earl Cohnhorst. The senior executive is the only friend at B&W that Wigand has left. He supports Wigand's vision for research and development, and Wigand appreciates having some support in the office. But today, there's something different in Cohnhorst's voice. He asks that Wigand come to his office. So Wigand hangs up and heads for the elevator. When he reaches Cohnhorst's office, the executive looks up from his desk, his brow furrowed. He indicates for Wigand to sit. Wigand takes a seat and asks what's wrong. Cohnhorst doesn't hesitate. He informs Wigand that he's on thin ice with upper management. They've had enough of his complaining and his questions. If Wigand wants to keep working at B&W, he must do as he's told. Wigand stares at Cohnhorst. Part of him holds on to the hope that this is some kind of prank. But Cohnhorst doesn't smile. Instead, he tells Wigand to consider this a final warning. Wigand shakes his head. He knows this has to be Sandifer talking. He can picture the company president telling Cohnhorst to get Wigand in line or be fired himself. Wigand's face grows hot. It's true he's been angry, he tells Cohnhorst. In fact, he's furious that he was misled about creating a better cigarette. There are things happening at the company and within the industry that just aren't right. He can't be expected to stay silent. But Cohnhorst looks unmoved. He says that if Wigand is going to be unreasonable, there's no way he can protect him. Wigand just needs to clean up his act before it's too late. And that's all Cohnhorst has to say on the matter. Dismissed and stunned, Wigand stands and heads back to his office. He thought Cohnhorst was a close friend, and the betrayal stings painfully. But it also hardens his resolve. He knows B&W's use of cigarette additives is wrong. So is the way it abandoned its project to lower the risk of cancer from smoking. But Wigand also knows that big tobacco is not an industry to cross. For years, there have been hushed whispers about those who dared. Some had their lives ruined. But Wigand isn't afraid to play hardball. He has a deep well of knowledge about Brown and Williamson. If he wanted to, he could topple the company like a house of cards. His head starts to spin as he imagines going after B&W, showing the whole world what they've been up to. But then he takes a deep breath, tries to steady his thoughts. It's one thing to put himself in Brown and Williamson's crosshairs, but it's another to put his family in the same position. This isn't the time for open warfare. For now, all he can do is stockpile ammunition. It's March 24th, 1993, and about 9 months after Jeffrey Wigand was warned to keep quiet. Today, he sits on a stool in the Brown and Williamson lab and peers through a microscope. The scope is out of date, just like everything in his lab. Wigand rubs his eyes. There are high school chemistry classrooms with more advanced equipment than this. Wigand looks up and slowly exhales. Every time he's down here, he gets depressed. And making matters worse, the company promoted Tom Sandifer to CEO 2 months ago. Now Wigand feels more isolated than ever. He's just about to reach for his scientific journal when he hears the sound of heavy footsteps. Wigand feels something twist in the pit of his stomach. The lab door is flung open, and 3 security guards march in. They're followed by a man in a gray suit and tie. Wigand recalls that this is the man from Human Resources. He looks at Wigand with a scowl on his face. Mr. Wigand, you'll need to come with us. Your position here at Brown and Williamson is terminated. These men are here to escort you from the premises. Wigand blinks in confusion. The head security guard steps forward. Now, Mr. Wigand. Wait, what about all my stuff? The man from HR checks his watch, not even looking up. Well, leave it for now. Everything will be collected and returned to you. We can't have you walking out with any sensitive materials. I'm sure you understand. Now, please, come with us. Wigand stands. He feels the initial shock subsiding, and his anger is starting to bubble up. Look, just give me a minute. I need my journal. No, you are to leave all items and come with us to HR. You need to sign confidentiality paperwork. This is a requirement. Wigand stares. The fighter in him wants to throw a right hook. Instead, he smiles sarcastically, picks up his coat, and throws it over his shoulder. Well, fine. I was getting sick of this place anyway. Wigand hopes he's come across as unbothered, but the truth is he is scared. Tom Sanford has held the guillotine over Wigand's head ever since the new year, and today he's finally let it drop. Wigand is jobless, with no prospects, and he's got looming bills to pay for the comfortable life his family now lives and for his daughter's medical treatment. The wave of anguish catches Wigand by surprise. He's stayed at this broken company for many reasons, but above all, he did it to provide for his child. Now she's more vulnerable than ever. Meanwhile, Tom Sanford will grow richer and more powerful by the day. This injustice sets Wigand's teeth on edge. But as Wigand is led out by the security guards, it hits him. Now that he no longer has a job to protect, he can finally take off the gloves. The heads of Brown and Williamson think they've killed him off, but all they've done is set him free. It's late at night in March 1993. Merrell Williams staggers through the doors of the emergency room at the University of Louisville Hospital. The bright lights stab at his eyes, and his wife Sherry struggles to keep him upright. The nurse spots them and rushes over. Williams tries to tell her what's wrong, but he can't get the words out. He starts to panic, starts taking deep, ragged breaths. He hears that Sherry is panicked too and scared. She's telling the nurse that she doesn't know what's wrong. Her husband just woke up like this, saying he couldn't breathe. Suddenly, Williams feels dizzy. The room starts spinning and goes black. When he opens his eyes again, Williams is lying in a hospital bed with tubes in his arms. It's late morning. His wife sits beside him. Her face looks pale. She clutches a handful of crumpled tissues, and when Williams meets her eyes, she murmurs, "Thank God." Right away, he asks what happened. Sherry tells him that he had a heart attack. The surgeon operated all night to save his life. He's stunned and speechless. When he has the strength to talk again, he asks about his daughters. Sherry says they're at the house. Her sister's watching them. Williams leans back as the tears come. He pictures his young girls' innocent faces. Came so close to never seeing them again, and he wonders if he's ever done anything to truly make them proud. Can't imagine that he has. But now Williams can feel it in his bones. He's been blessed with a second chance. He can still be a hero in their eyes. He tells Sherry that he finally gets it. He knows what he's supposed to do with the boxes in the basement. At 52, Williams finally understands the purpose of his life. The heart attack was a message from God, he says. The tobacco industry is dangerous. It's gone too far for too long. The companies must be stopped, and God wants Merrell Williams to stop them. It's spring 1993 in Berkeley, California. The coastal marine layer has yet to burn off, and the air is cool, the sky overcast. Lowell Bergman sits at his kitchen table, holding a steaming mug of black coffee, and scanning the front page of the San Francisco Chronicle. For the 47-year-old journalist, this is only the first of several newspapers he'll read today. Bergman believes that newspapers are to be read cover to cover, swiftly but with care. They offer the headlines, tips, and clues that help him do his job, because Bergman is a producer on 60 Minutes, the award-winning television news show. Bergman's about to turn the page when he hears a heavy thump on his front porch. He heads through the door, opens it, and looks down. Bergman raises an eyebrow. He looks left, then right. Across the street, one of his neighbors pushes a lawnmower back and forth. Other than that, there's no sign of anyone. Whoever did this did it quickly and got away fast. Bergman looks down and takes stock of a large wooden crate on his doorstep. It's stuffed with papers, and he can see the word confidential on a few pages. Bergman isn't alarmed. He specializes in investigative reporting, and people often send anonymous tips and court documents directly to his house. It's his responsibility to examine these materials and figure out where they lead. So he picks up the heavy crate with a grunt and heads back inside. Bergman returns to his kitchen table. He reaches into the crate and carefully removes a set of documents. Paging through them, Bergman immediately realizes two things. First, whatever he's holding is not public information. Second, the papers come from Philip Morris, the tobacco giant behind Marlboro cigarettes. Bergman doesn't consider himself an expert on the tobacco industry, but he does know a few things. One is that big tobacco manufactures a dangerous product and rakes in billions from sales. He also knows that the industry has historically been immune to litigation. Maybe these documents contain evidence that could damage an industry long thought to be invincible. Or maybe not, because Bergman can't really make heads or tails of the figures, charts, and graphs he holds in his hand. They all look technical, so he's going to need some help deciphering them. Bergman enters his home office and closes the door. He begins flipping through his Rolodex. It contains hundreds of phone numbers. Phone numbers for fellow investigators, business insiders, industry informants, and spies. But Bergman doesn't have to flip for long. Fortunately, he knows just the person to call. Next, on American Scandal, Merrell Williams launches a crusade. Jeffrey Wigand makes the most important decision of his life, and a team of lawyers decides to take on Big Tobacco. From Wondery, this is episode 1 of Big Tobacco for American Scandal. If you like our show, please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review. And be sure to tell your friends. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Wondery app, or wherever you're listening right now. In the episode notes, you'll find some links and offers from our sponsors. Supporting them helps us keep offering our shows for free. Another way you can support the show is by filling out a small survey at Wondery.com/survey to tell us what topics we might cover next. You can also find us and me on Twitter. Search for hashtag American Scandal or follow me at Lindsay A. Graham. And be sure to listen to my other podcasts too, American History Tellers and American Elections Wicked Game. A quick note about our reenactments. In most cases, we can't know exactly what was said, but all our dramatizations are based on historical research. If you'd like to learn more about the fight against Big Tobacco, we recommend the books The People vs. Big Tobacco by Carrick Mollenkamp, Adam Levy, Joseph Ment, and Jeffrey Rothfeder, and Smokescreen, The Truth Behind the Tobacco Industry Cover-Up by Philip J. Hiltz. American Scandal is hosted, edited, and executive produced by me, Lindsay Graham, for Airship. Audio editing by Molly Bach. Sound design by Derek Behrens. This episode is written by Hannibal Diaz. Edited by Christina Malsberger. Produced by Gabe Riven. Executive producers are Stephanie Jens, Jenny Lauer-Beckman, and Hernan Lopez for Wondery.